Today we're actually talking about something that I absolutely love. It is character design. Character design is the thing that I do. I've even written 2 books about character design. So definitely go check those out because those are really fun. I will definitely leave a link in the description below. But character design is something that I actually get asked about a lot. So I want to make sure that we give it a little bit of attention. And this is going to be a multiple series video because there's a lot to cover. There's a lot to cover, and a lot of people don't actually get the idea that you need to do a lot of work in order to get good character designs. But I think that's enough rambling about trying to tell you about how much work it's going to be to get good character designs, and let's just jump into good character design. So we're doing something just a little bit different when it comes to the 5 tips today, because tip 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 all deal with the most important thing for character design, and that is story. I will fight every single person who is on a different platform about character design, because story is the most important aspect of character design. If you have a good story, you are going to create a good character. That is it, hands down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No matter what you actually think, storytelling is the absolute most important part of character design. I cannot stress that enough. The most important part: storytelling. So we're gonna actually look at how I would generally come up with something really quick, because I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, it takes so long, there's so much story. Well, you can actually knock it out in 5 questions. So the first question, who? So tip number 1 is storytelling. Who? Who is your character? It's a very simple question, although if you're like me, you have a really hard time determining what that person's name is. So you're like, who? But it breaks down the basics, like who is the character? What is their name? How tall are they? What hair color do they have? What's their body type? Just some basic attributes that you can give to your character that you think is going to be important, right? And it tells us just a little bit about who they are. And it's very superficial, very quick information, so that if someone's like, oh, is this person 13? You're like, no, actually they're 28. Or vice versa. And it allows you to give a very quick summary of your character, and it's just something to get you started. So if you could answer the who question, who is this character, not going into super detail, but just who, age, height, weight, any type of attributes, scars, tattoos, anything like that. If you can give us those quick answers, then we've already got a good leg up on where or who this character is going to be. All right, see, simple. On to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is actually just as simple. It's what? What does this character do? What? Just what? What does this character do? They're a superhero. They're a police officer. They are a police officer by day and a superhero by night. Or in the case of Breaking Bad, they're a teacher by day and a meth cooker by the rest of the time they're not teaching. So, you are able to have just something very easy that allows us to know who they are, right? Just right off the bat. What do they do? It's very simple. These tips are so easy that you should be able to write them down and answer these questions and have a good idea of where your character is going. What do they do? It's very simple. There's really nothing else to that. What do they do? That's it. Are they a wanderer? Are they a school teacher? Are they a bum? Are they, whatever it is, what is it that they do? That's going to be the easy question and tip number 2. All right, let's get to tip number 3. Tip number 3 is a little bit more complicated than the first two, only because you are establishing your world. And if you haven't done world building, that's a whole nother, that's a big deal. Like, world building is very, very important. You need to know where exactly your character takes place, like where and when your character is living and doing the things that they do. Because if you don't know the world, like, you might be making this medieval knight and then you throw them into futuristic, neon Tokyo, and they're like, what? Unless there's a story that goes with it, right? Because you can make that work, but there needs to be a story. That's the most important part. As I said at the very beginning of the video, story is the most important part. So you can have a knight that is in Neo Tokyo, but the thing is, if you didn't plan on that happening, then your story is going to fall flat and people aren't going to like your character or the world that you've placed them in. So when is a time period, right? It's like, when does it happen? But that falls into, right, your world building, which we will do a video on later. But when is important because it shapes the attire, it shapes how they talk, it shapes how they cut their hair, it shapes a lot of things about the character that you need to know about. And just by going, 1980s, right? You can go back and look at the 1980s and then go, so they did this. Shoulder pads were really big, wild, funky color, big hair. You were able to look at that and go, all right, well, now I'm going to take this character and I'm going to try and make them fit in here. Unless you're drawing, fish out of water story and you're like, nope, this person is different. But generally speaking, if you know when it happens, or roughly when it happens, your story that is, your character will be able to develop because you can look it up, right? You're able to look it up, and that's going to be very, very important. So definitely know when your story takes place so that your character's story can actually be something that's fantastic and it fits, it feels natural. That's something that is very important when it comes to storytelling, character design, world building, is that it's got to feel as though it was natural, not forced, not like, oh my goodness, that you're trying to stick this square piece into this circle hole, and that just doesn't work, right? And you don't want that. You want the viewer or the reader to feel as though they are immersed in this world, the character fits in that world, and that you thought about everything. And you're gonna have to do world building first. Or you can just answer these questions so you can get a rough idea, and then you can design your character to fit into it. But all in all, it's going to be wrapped around in story. So tip 1, 2, and 3 are who, what, when, and I'm pretty sure you know where we're gonna go for tip number 4. That's right, tip number 4 is where. Okay, that builds into when. So if you know when, you can do where, right? And that is going to be, once again, wrapped up in your world building, and that's what's going to allow your character to thrive in the story, so you know where it's taking place. Once again, so that you can actually get some type of reference of what it is you're trying to do with your story and your character, right? Even if you're going, it's a post-apocalyptic world, you go, well, okay, where? Well, what happened, right? And that will allow you to design your character, right? And if you're like, this is New York, and then you can go, all right, well, we need to eventually throw in the Statue of Liberty because that was there, and that will instantly bring people in, right? But if you can do that and you can answer where it's going to take place, that gives you a lot of visual clues to work off of, because once again, everyone kind of has to feel as though it fits and that it's right, and that we can relate to something in some way. And so if you know when and where things are going to take place, your character will not feel out of place. And that's going to be what's important, right? Because story is what's going to push your character design. And in this case, the story still has to deal with the world that is surrounding the character. And not to mention, there's a fantastic book by Dr. Elvin Hernandez called Setting the Action. I'll make sure to put a link in the description below, where he talks about environments as a character. And that is very important, because you can actually add these entire tips for environments as well. You can make these environments a character, and that's very important. If you look at all of the fantastic stories and worlds and characters and stuff that you see, when you look around them, the environment is actually just as rich, just as informative as the characters that interact with them. So knowing where your character is going to be doing the majority of their stuff, or even if they're jumping from place to place to place, you know where that's going to happen, the backstory, the history, the mythology, and whatever goes along with it, you can actually build your character, right? So you can do the fish out of water story because they moved to another place. Like, well, we were in New York and then we went to Texas, right? And it's like, oh, those are different, different cultures. People act different, they talk different, and you're like, okay, I'm kind of out of place here. But you could really push that with your character. But you need to know where things take place, because it pushes the story. And as I said before, the number one thing for character designs that you need to know is that story is over everything. Story is everything, okay? So if you have a good story, you will be able to obtain a good character design, okay? And all of this stuff, just in case you haven't noticed, is what you do before you start drawing, or before you start painting or modeling, or whatever it is you do to make characters. You do this beforehand. And that's what's important, right? Not everything is about scribbling really, really fast. You gotta get this story down first. And yes, before you jump on me, yes, you can draw a character and write the story afterwards. But if you do that, your character is going to change. I guarantee it. Even though people are like, well, my character didn't change. Yes, it did. If you change the boots because you wrote the story, or if you change the gloves or the hat or the weapon or whatever, if you changed it from the original design after you wrote the story, it's because your story influenced your character design. It always will, and it always has. So why not just start with these 5 simple tips on how to create a character? Do this first for your story, and then bam, you'll be able to get to drawing, sculpting, whatever it is that you do to make your characters, and everything will be fantastic. All right, so we've got who, what, when, where. Do you know what tip number 5 is? That's right. Tip number 5 is why. Why? Why does this character exist? Why do they do what they do? This one is the one you should have so much fun with, because you get to write the backstory. You get to tell us what this character is about, what makes this character tick, why do they do what they do. Now, you can write 3 paragraphs, or you can write 300 pages of backstory. That is completely up to you and how fast you want to get to drawing, sculpting, painting, whatever it is that you want to do. But the thing is that the more you expand on that why, the more confident I am you are going to have a fantastic character, because they will be so enriched, so deeply rooted in story, that every little bit, every little strap or bolt, or the way they do their hair has a meaning. Like, why do they do this? When did this happen? Do they have this bracelet because it came from their best friend right before they died? It allows you to have a lot of story. It allows you to have a lot of connection with the audience, and that's what's important, okay? When it comes to the why, it's very important that you actually make sure that the viewer can connect to your character in some way, shape, or form. And if you don't have a good why or backstory, then they won't. It'll feel as though your character is flat. And that is not what you want to have happen. You do not want a flat, one-dimensional character. So you're going to have to put some time into making sure that your character isn't flat. And that comes from writing out this why. And if you write out the why and you do it successfully, people will be able to connect. You will see that certain people over here will like this character more, and certain people over here will like this character more. And it's solely because they connect to certain characters because of certain reasons, right? Completely, at random, or because it actually happened to them, or whatever the case may be. But you need to make sure you have that why, and the why has to be strong, because if it's not, you'll have a boring character. One mini tip, half tip, special tip, creator tip, I don't know. You tell me what I should call the extra tips that are, hidden inside of the video. You should think about contrast. Within your why, do contrast. Go against what we understand as like social norms, or something that's iconic, or something that we go, oh, I know exactly what that means. That's what this character is this way, and go against that. Like if you have a really big, burly, biker dude, and he's got all of the typical, like what you think is a biker, right? Looks mean, looks like he could chew up nails, just mean. And you're like, ooh, that's, I don't want to mess with that guy. But then in the vest pocket, right? In his pocket of his vest, he has a little white kitten, right? And then you go, wait, but what? Why do you have? And then, he's all like, oh, I love my little kitten, Fluffy, oh. And then he puts the kitten back in his pocket and he looks at you like he's still gonna chew nails up, right? That adds a little bit to the character, a little bit of story that you can go, oh, that's really, okay, there's more to this character than what we just see. And that is what you want. You want to be able to give like a visual clue to a character and go, there's a little bit more that you don't know yet. I'm going to reveal it later, but there's something there. If you can put that in there as a like storytelling piece, just this little bit of contrast, no matter what it is, that is really going to hook people into your story. And that's what you want. You want people to be invested in the story that you're trying to tell. And there's the overall story that happens, and then there's every individual character story. And you want people to get hooked in your character story. So in order to do that, you need to make sure that you have a good why for your story, or for your character. All right, those are my 5 tips, 5 basic tips. There are more to come because there's a lot more to cover when it comes to character design. But if you start doing those 5 tips just to start off your character, I guarantee you're going to have an easier time drawing the character and less redraws because you already know where you're starting. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I make content every single week, so if you have not yet, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so you can get notified every time I do a new video. Also, don't be afraid to like, share, and let everybody know that these 5 tips are coming out every week. And if you have a topic that you want me to cover, please drop me a message in the comments and I will add it to the list, and I will give it my utmost attention so that we can get stuff out there so that you can boss up to the next level. And don't be afraid to join my Discord. There's going to be a link in the description so that we can all come together as creatives and boost each other up and get to the next level. All right, thank you very much, and I'll see you at the next video.